Hi everyone, Derek Holm here with Neogenics, and I am joined by the lovely DEBORAH Maragopoulos,
Hi
fully
there.
integrative nurse practitioner and one of the smartest people I have ever met in my life. Thank you so much for being here, Deb.
Thank you for having me.
And we are going to dive right in and discuss NeoDIM, and in particular, the main ingredient, the DIM, diindolylmethane, and kind of get some inside information from a leader in the hormone field. First of all, can you start by just telling us a little bit about your professional experience in women's health?
Well, it's just not women's health. I'm actually a family nurse practitioner. So I've been actually in clinical practice for 32 years now, and integrative practice for 22 years. My specialty is what's called neuroimmune endocrinology, which is the study of the biochemistry of the body. You can call them hormones for, sake of a better word, but neurotransmitters, cytokines, and all the hormones of the body. So not just sex hormones, thyroid, adrenal, pituitary, insulin, the whole ball of wax. And my focus is on trying to balance out the master controller of the neuroimmune endocrine system, which is the hypothalamus. So I see patients ranging from as simple as PMS and menopause and infertility to multiple sclerosis, seizure disorders, major autoimmune issues, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, adrenal decline, brain trauma, you name it. If it affects any of those chemical messengers, that's my ball of wax. And I'm kind of a medical detective. So most of the patients that come to see me, and I do medical video conferencing, I've been doing telemedicine for over 20 years. So they come from all over the world. They've usually seen anywhere from 6 or 7 other specialists before they come to see me because they can't figure out what the root cause is. So I use my clinical expertise, a lot of intuition, which I think is a big piece of the healing arts, and a lot of scientific research to figure out what's going on with these patients, and then develop a therapeutic plan and get them on their way to healing. So
That is incredible. Yeah, I
you.
told you guys. Smart. Can you please explain the estrogen metabolism? How is estrogen metabolized? Kind of the basics of the cycle.
Well, estrogen, so most people make estrogen from their gonads, and in women that would be the ovaries. For men, it's testosterone that gets converted into estrogen, and your adrenal glands, both males and females, produce DHEA, which can convert to testosterone and then into estrogen. So we start off, so let's go with the women's cycle first, because it kind of makes a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm.
The main estrogen that your ovaries produce is estradiol, and estradiol is very potent. It's basically what your brain needs, your skin needs to prevent wrinkles, your hair needs to stay lush, your vagina needs to stay juicy, it's what your colon needs to stay healthy, it's what your heart needs to stay healthy, and of course it gives you your menstrual cycles, your fertility, as well as your breast growth, so your secondary sexual characteristics. So estradiol is the it, but it doesn't last very long in the body. It's short acting. So your body converts estradiol to estrone. Estrone was the very first discovered estrogen, so it is denoted E1 and estradiol E2, but not because of importance, because of how they were discovered. The other estrogen is estriol E3, and it's the dominant estrogen in pregnancy. So going back to estrone, estradiol gets converted into estrone in your fat cells. Okay, so the fat that women have on their bodies, particularly in reproductive years around their hips and their thighs, is where all that conversion happens. It'll happen in the white fat cells as well in the belly, but it mainly happens in the brown fat of the hips and the thighs. So what happens is when you're a very young woman in your reproductive years, you convert the majority of your estradiol to a very safe, I call it the good estrone, 2-hydroxyl estrone. Now the hydroxyl group, which is an oxygen and a hydrogen together, all it is the estrogen molecule has a bunch of carbons on it. Okay, it's got 17 carbons, and there's a hydroxyl group sitting on the second carbon. That's why it's called 2-hydroxyl estrone.
Okay.
Doesn't mean anything to us other than the fact that that's the good guy. That's the one we want. We want lots of that. And when you're young, you naturally make that. And also, if you eat enough fish, oils. The EPA in fish oils will influence that. The ligands in like flaxseed, which are kind of a fiber-like molecule, will influence that. If you exercise and are active, if you keep your weight under control, if you don't, abuse alcohol, meaning excessively drink, and if you eat lots of cruciferous vegetables, which is where DIM comes in. DIM is the active ingredient in cruciferous vegetables that influences the 2-hydroxyestrogen metabolism to the safe part. Now, why do you want to do that? Because if it gets converted into the other estrogens, the other estrogens, it's not safe. The other dominant estrogen is called 16-hydroxyestrogen, and it's very inflammatory. It's what causes the fibroids, the heavy menstrual periods, the painful breast, being overweight. Anytime you have an estrogen-related issue like melasma, when you get the dark skin on your face during pregnancy, that's 16-hydroxyestrogen.
Wow.
Women who are overweight, women who don't exercise much, women who abuse alcohol, and just as we age, we naturally make more of the 16-hydroxyestrogen. Then there's a third estrone. It's called 4-hydroxyestrogen, and it is carcinogenic.
Oh, wow.
It will cause cancer. And we do make a little bit of it, but we don't just get cancer because we convert a little bit of our estrogen into 4-hydroxyestrogen. But certain types of estrogen replacement therapy, like Premarin, is always converted into 4-hydroxyestrogen, which is one of the reasons why we saw so much breast cancer in the Women's Health Initiative study. So it doesn't mean if you've taken Premarin, you're definitely going to get breast cancer, because it's a multifactorial disease, but it's not the safest. It's the only thing your liver can do with pregnant mare's urine derived estrone. So you've got your good estrone, you got your bad estrone, you got your ugly, which is your 4-hydroxyl.
Oh, that is incredibly interesting. So we don't want the 16 or the 4.
No, we want lots of 2.
Want lots of 2. So when speaking about diindolylmethane, what is its role in helping to obtain that more 2?
So because the estrogen you always make is estradiol, you want to always try to convert as much as possible to 2-hydroxyestrogen, and you can influence that by taking DIM. DIM will help you convert your estrogen into the safest, healthiest form possible. Estrogen is very long acting, so we all make it. All women make it. The heavier you are, the more estrogen you make. So we want the most of it to be 2-hydroxyestrogen as possible.
Oh.
DIM influences that. So now the thing of it is cruciferous vegetables are rich in DIM, but the amount of cruciferous vegetables you would have to eat to get the equivalent of what's in NeoDIM, which are 100 milligram capsules, right? 200 milligram capsules. Oh, wow. So we're talking about 8 to 10 pounds of broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts per day to get just 200 milligrams of DIM. Now, they'd be really healthy, but you'd be super gassy. So it's a lot. And now I'm not saying not to eat cruciferous vegetables. Of course, add them into their diet. There's a lot of other elements of cruciferous vegetables that actually have anti-carcinogenic effects. But DIM is one of the easiest ways to actually help your body convert estradiol into the safe, good 2-hydroxyestrogen.
Oh, that's really neat to hear. Thank you so much for that explanation. Now we're learning more and more about DIM. I do know that it's still relatively new in the supplement world, and more studies are coming out, and we are seeing some benefit to men as well as women. Can you talk about what men might benefit?
So the way men benefit from using DIM is DIM also acts as what's called an aromatase inhibitor. And basically what that means is it helps to prevent testosterone from being converted into estrogen. Now, men want to keep as much of their testosterone as possible. They'll always convert a little bit into estrogen, okay? But as they get older, and especially if they're overweight, they convert way more of their testosterone into estrogen, which leads to being more overweight, loss of muscle mass, man boobs, loss of bone mass. Okay, so men don't want that. So DIM actually helps your body maintain more of its natural testosterone by preventing it from converting into estrogen.
Okay.
The other thing DIM does for men, which is really, really interesting and very, very cool, is that it's actually been studied for men with prostate cancer. And it appears to actually block the dihydrotestosterone, which is the more active form of testosterone for men. It's that particular testosterone is very, very influential in stimulating prostate cancer. It tends
Oh,
to block the receptor site for dihydrotestosterone. And in that case, it's kind of like hormone therapy for prostate cancer, except it's also preventing the testosterone from converting into estrogen. And so instead of knocking out a man's testosterone altogether, you can actually keep the healthy testosterone, prevent the stimulating cancerous testosterone, and prevent estrogen production. So they've actually seen quite an effect of DIM as actually preventing cancer and also treating cancer. Now, it's not been shown for sure. This is all test tube, where
right.
it causes what's called apoptosis, where it kills the cancer cell in the test tube. So
Well, that's pretty crazy. Hopefully, the research will continue, and they'll continue to see some positive developments in that area, because that is a nasty thing to get. And if the FDA is listening, we do not say that DIM
no.
cures
So
cancer.
it was, and these, the studies that I'm quoting are through the National Health Institute. So,
Right.
but they always start in the test tube. They always start with mice and rats before they move them in. They do have some really good breast cancer studies looking at DIM alongside a tamoxifen, because tamoxifen also seems to block estrogen metabolism, and
Okay.
DIM seems to be almost as effective. The problem is if you're taking tamoxifen, you don't want to take DIM too, because they compete with each other. So you definitely want to talk with your oncologist. But DIM seems to be very protective. I definitely recommend for my patients who have a high risk for prostate cancer or breast cancer, they need to be taking DIM on a regular basis.
Hmm.
It's as a preventative, because I mean, we can control other factors like their diet, and they can start exercising more and lose that extra body fat and not drink so much alcohol. I mean, there's other things they can control that's going to contribute, but in terms of controlling the estrogen metabolism, DIM is a really easy control of that.
Um, what else would be beneficial for women to hear about NeoDIM? Is there any other secondary benefits?
Yeah. So one of the other effects is when you're controlling your estrogen metabolism in terms of preventing the bad and the ugly estrogens, right? What's going to happen is you're going to have less painful periods. You're going to have periods that won't be so heavy. You'll be less likely to have fibrocystic breast condition, which is when your breasts are really lumpy, bumpy, and tender, and especially right before your menstrual cycle. That it may also contribute to having less inflammation from too much estrogen on board, which means you have a little less water retention and bloating, a little less PMS symptoms. So DIM, because it's helping your metabolism of estradiol into the safe 2-hydroxyl-estrone, can actually make having periods a lot more comfortable.
Can you explain, was there any difference that you noticed in taking Neogenic's NeoDIM versus other DIM products that you might have tried in the past?
Well, what I found with Neogenics is I actually got a little more bang for my buck. So personally, I've used DIM for a couple reasons. So there's an interesting effect that I have noticed, because I'm super sensitive to my body, but lots of women are, is that if I drink more than one glass of wine or have more than one alcoholic drink, my breasts will become tender. If I take DIM, that doesn't happen. I have to take a double dose of other DIMs compared to NeoDIM. So we go on
You're
vacation. I know I'm going to be drinking. I make sure I take my NeoDIM with me. I don't want to have sore breasts. But I know that it's protecting and also, on vacation, I'm not able to eat all the cruciferous vegetables I'd like to eat, et cetera.
right.
So the NeoDIM, it just has that protective effect. I also used it and I use it in quite a few of my patients. So any of my patients who need to wean off of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, either we're taking a break or it's time for them to wean down. Usually they're menopausal, and it's just time to wean down. It's a tough wean, going from having hormones to not having hormones. Think of women being pregnant and then having that postpartum depression when their hormones just crash. Well, it's a similar feel when women are going through menopause, when their own hormones crash, or if we've given them hormone replacement therapy and now it's time to take them off for whatever reason. I use NeoDIM as a way to kind of wean them down and prevent a lot of the side effects of coming down off of the hormones. Because what's going to happen is they're going to have all that the hormone that's stored in their fat get flushed into the system. And so while their hormones are falling and they're having hot flashes and night sweats, they're also having breast tenderness. They may start bleeding again. NeoDIM kind of quells all of that craziness, so we
Okay.
can easily kind of get them down off of the hormones without feeling like they're going nuts.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant.
So
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for all this information. This has been truly enlightening, and I can't wait to share it with everyone in our Neogenics family. And any final thoughts?
just that I think prevention is really the key. And so, like I said, both women and men, controlling your weight, exercising, eating those cruciferous vegetables. But if you're at high risk for cancers that are hormone related in testosterone in men and estrogen in women, DIM is really, really a good preventive for you.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Deborah. Do you have a direct link that you can share?
Yeah, so they could go to the Hormone Queen, or they can go to my website, Genesis Gold.
Thank you so much, and look forward to meeting you on the launch party night, November 2nd.
Yeah, I look forward
And
to it.
we will talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.